Professor Srinarayan Sharma, Faculty, IIM Kashipur. Professor Sharma will also be the moderator for the discussion.
Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Debashis Bose. He is the founder, owner of Crestra Communication Pvt. Ltd. We welcome you, sir.
Our next panel member is Mr. Barttanu. He is the Senior Vice President and Head Human Resources, Dart Express Ltd.
Next, I'd like to call upon stage Mr. Rajiv Bajaj. He is the CEO of FILA. We welcome you, sir.
Last but not the least, I would like to call upon stage Professor Navneet Kaur, Faculty, IIM Kashipur.
Panelists, I'd like to inform you that the panel discussion will be for 1 hour, followed by question and answers. You may please begin the discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Well, welcome to the first panel of the day, and our topic is free thinking. Now, free thinking comes from free thought, and free thought is a philosophical viewpoint that holds opinions should be formed on the basis of logic, reason, empiricism, rather than authority, traditions, and other dogmas. And cognitive application of free thought is known as free thinking. Practitioners of free thought are known as free thinkers. Now, free thought holds that individuals should not accept ideas proposed as truth without recourse to knowledge and reason. And thus, free thinkers strive to build their opinion on the basis of facts, scientific inquiry, and logical principles, independent of any logical fallacies. Now, in the morning session, Dr. Dwivedi was talking about the role of innovation, and Bivan, I'm forgetting the other name, also talked about the role of open innovation. Now, in this session, I'm going to request our expert panelists to share their thoughts on the role of free thinking in students' lives, how they can become a better manager, how they can become a better leader, how they can become a better person in their own lives, and how free thinking can help them to employment anywhere in the world, in any place, in any culture, as Dr. Dwivedi has so well articulated. So I'm going to start with. Now what we'll do, we'll take about 7 minutes, and I'll ask the panelists to share their thoughts on the role of free thinking, and after that we'll open the floor for questions and answers. And I'm expecting a lot of questions in this session, because all you are free thinkers.
Good morning to all of you. As I see it, free thinking is one area which is very relevant today, and it will become more relevant, and it will, everybody, either at individual level or corporates or by the society or by the government, everybody will like to have the benefits of free thinkers. Why I am saying, what is my understanding of free thinking? if I go back to my student days, I see that I subscribe to a thought processes which was more of creating egalitarianism, more equal opportunities, correcting social imbalances. To be very specific, I subscribe to the maybe thoughts of left ideologies, and maybe spent 3-4 hours, 3-4-5 years in that. And it was all, if I introspect and see that it was all filled up with ideology, and probably, it was a theoretical ideology because of, whatever maybe because of family pressures, social requirement, or our individual aspirations, I entered into a corporate world. But how I have leveraged the ability and the free thinking or some kind of thought processes or ideologies that I used to subscribe, was intended to create some change, social change, or some transformation, right? Now, when I entered into the corporate world, I imbibed or practiced those kind of free thinking or thought processes that I had as an individual, applied them in very different roles that I handled in my corporate life. So, for example, when I started as a management trainee in National Thermal Power Corporation, now they call it NTPC, and I
leading thought leader in technology, Wired magazine, about 5 years back, actually predicted that the age of information now is over and we are now living in the age of creativity. And in the age of creativity, it is going to be ideas which will be king. It will be your thought processes which will be king, which it's your opinions and your viewpoints. And this is going to be an age in which people who are in the creative fields will be probably given a lot more importance than they were given earlier. So I just want to lay the ground for why free thinking is extremely important as a topic of discussion today. The second part of the topic was dealing with how it is difficult to do free thinking given the pressures of delivery. Now, we've heard other speakers today talk about how industry actually celebrates and wants 99.99% perfection in everything that they want. And if you really look at it, most industry is actually it lays a lot of premium on certainty. It does not like chaos. It does not like unpredictability. So, unfortunately, when you start looking at innovation, or you start thinking of great ideas or radical thinking, it is usually given a short shrift in industry and business. Because the fact is that if you're looking at fundamental research at one end of the spectrum, as much as 90% of it is doomed to failure. Only 10% of it actually are successful. So contrast this particular statistics against industry which wants 99.99% certainty. It's going to be very difficult. In fact, Roosevelt Moss Cantor of Harvard actually says that industry is anti-innovation. But that might be a rather strong statement to make, and I'm sure in India we're not quite that bad. Now, I come from a creative field, that is advertising, and for us, ideas and creativity are actually a stock in trade. So every day we have to think anew, create anew, and deliver. And while the topic very clearly says that it's difficult to deliver under pressure, let me say this, that in advertising, it works the opposite way. We have to deliver under pressure, and the fact is this, that I've never as yet met any client who gives me a brief and says, you can come back to me with your ideation and your creatives whenever you want to. It's always something that has been needed yesterday. So we have to live in extremely high time pressure schedules, and we have to deliver high quality at the same time. And it's not a product which has been seen before, because every time you create something, it's something new that has happened. So how do we do this? Well, there are two ways in this. One is to create an environment in which creativity can flourish or free thinking can flourish. So if you go to any advertising agency, you will find that it's usually an extremely zany workplace with a lot of color and people walking around in maybe kurta pajamas, and so overall the environment is that of something in which you actually remove the bureaucracy and you actually encourage people to be a lot more comfortable with their thoughts and their ideas, because that is really the key. In fact, most agency heads in India are always referred to by the first name. There's no sir and there's no madam and there's no mister ever used in these places. The other way we do things is that we actually follow a lot of discipline, which sounds strange in the context of free thinking, but the fact is this, that we employ processes like a briefing process and a brief in which somebody actually has to come out with insights about the brand and about the consumer, and all that emanates from free thinking. So we actually develop thinking tools which enable you to be able to reach that insight, to reach that new ideation quicker and in a more relevant way. So there is a lot of hope in terms of free thinking for this generation and for the future. And from whatever else I've seen of the IIM Kashipur video, I am very, very convinced that all of you here are extremely bright, talented, very open in your thoughts, very transparent, and your faculty too is extremely cool, whatever interaction I've seen. And honestly, if you have a director who rides into office on his bullet, that's an extremely chilled out director. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Professor Kaur.
There's enough ground set on what rethinking is and why it is important. I would like to say, take it further, how we can incorporate it in our, society or in our institutions. We have seen the societies having contrarian view. Suppose that there is a free thinking, and as already explained by Professor Sharma, free thinking is something making an opinion which is independent of institutional bias or cultures, independent of traditions, etc. And we have seen the institutions versus societies which promote free thinking. There is a high scientific innovation taking place in those societies. So that further enhance or that promotes society welfare, right? So now the question arises how we can incorporate it, or maybe we can say at society level, we can create an environment which allows, free speech, not only enable free speech, but also protect the right to free speech. So it should be allowed to maybe theaters, our media and social networking sites. And second thing can be we can institutionalize it, in the basic ground, that is schools, colleges and organizations. And how we can do it by maybe creating a culture of creating a culture of asking questions, creating a culture of saying people listening to others without any bias, creating a culture of contrarian view, right? And then organizations can create a culture of free communication and free thinking. Like Google does it like this. They have their employees, they can spend 20% of their time, employment time or job time, on working on something or thinking about idea which is not their regular day-to-day business or which they are interested in. And organizations can use these contrarian views to promote their products and services. So I would say these are the few steps we can take. And the last but not the least is creating a culture of learning by understanding. So there is a very good quote by Baruch, who says the highest activity a human being can attain is by learning by understanding, because to understand is to be free. Thank you.
for sharing their views on free thinking. Now we have about half an hour left in the time allocated to us. And free thinking, they have all positive sides our panelists talked about. Now free thinking also might have a negative side, which we did touch on those things. Free thinking might lead to freewheeling, although freewheeling is not free thinking, but it might have some negative side. Now what I'm going to request our students to ask our panelists any particular questions they have about free thinking, whether it can help them become a better leader, a better manager, a better human being, a better person in life. And I'm expecting a lot of questions, so I'll open the floor for questioning.
In these days, like US shutdown and dollar going down and over dependency on dollar. In such conditions, can businesses drop shipping? Because there are some constraints which are happening to businesses. When we talk about like Google and everything, then in that field where they have to innovate to sustain, that is their business model. But now, if like we go in manufacturing, in different accessories, that we go. So here can we say we can promote free thinking in such an economic stressful conditions in which India and various countries are.
You see, it is, of course, in technology sphere, one sees that the innovation takes place all the time. But I do not think it is the preserve of only technology companies to innovate and to think differently. It is not that manufacturing companies or companies in services sectors do not need to innovate. They also need to innovate all the time. It is not only a different product, it is not only a different communication for advertising, it can be a different process. So innovation is required all the time, actually, and as someone said, business is innovation and marketing. So if you do not do these two things, whatever else you might be doing, you would be a very large company, a very financially stable company, but those days are not far then when you will be nowhere actually. So innovation counts everywhere. It counts in, it is required at all times, whether economically you are doing well or not so well, you cannot afford not to have it actually.
If I can just add to that, in my own personal experience, I find that innovation is probably a lot more when you have constraints. I'll give an example of a client that we handle called Head Honchos, which is a recruitment portal for senior management, essentially CEOs and CXOs. So they really had a very, very small budget, and they had asked us to look at innovative ways to spread the brand communication. We discovered that there's a place called Cyber City in Gurgaon, in which there's something like maybe 140 lakh top-notch executives from about most of the Fortune 500 firms in Gurgaon are located there actually. And we discovered that they allow lifts to be branded, but nobody was willing to take the basement lift. They were only taking it from ground floor to the top, right? So we saw a new opportunity in that, and we said that the basement parking is essentially given out only to the senior management. So they would willy-nilly definitely come in there if they are driving the cars themselves, and that seems to be the trend nowadays. And we took the basement lifts for hardly any money, and we did this for 6 months, and it proved to be extremely successful in ensuring that the correct message was going out to the correct people. So the point is this, that when you have constraints of budget or you have a constraint of economy going down, in my opinion, that is when your innovative juices really start bubbling.
Yeah, I would also like to add, I would tend to agree, I would agree with my other two panelists that, you know, during the difficult times, the creative ability of the leaders or the managers are at the peak. Why I am saying this, I will relate to my organization. When we had passed through the most difficult phase in 2009 recession, some of the best product innovation had taken place, and some of the best cost, how we can optimize the cost initiatives were launched. For example, that was the time when we launched Six Sigma project and tried to how we can bring process efficiency and how we can bring what we call the cost benefits in all our operational processes. And now coming back to the recent situation of dollar example depreciation that you said, we were not because ours is such a business, it is a fixed cost model, and being our own infrastructure, air infrastructure, the fuel cost being 45% of our total cost, and therefore we do not have any control and fully externally determined, and nobody understands how it is going to hit our margins and profitability, and also the entire business model. So we were not able to get a solution to this, and today 65, 66, 67, 68.78 or whatever. Suddenly during a discussion of the managers, it was a junior level managers discussion, they said, why can't we, if we have a fuel surcharge mechanism, why we cannot come out with a currency adjustment factor? So if you can, if you have followed it the way we have done it, or you can study it further, we have come out with a concept called CAP, currency adjustment factor. And this was probably this solution, innovative solutions, very customized to our context. It could not have come in the good times. It came only during the bad times and when it was hitting us very badly. And therefore, I would agree that, of course, there are situations where one can really go wrong and can get into depressions. But there are situations if you leverage it well and you create that positive and conducive culture of leveraging or maybe harnessing the creative potential and ideas of the employees and contextualize to certain situations. It cannot be very idealistic and open manner, You have to really come out with a realistic problem and then catalyze them to come out with a solution, and the difficult time comes out with the most difficult.
Since we have enough time, I would like to share something on this free thinking. In my experience, I've been working with a lot of leaders, a lot of people, and I've learned from them. Now, one thing you need to know very clearly, that if you want to think free, if you want free thinking to come into you, you also should have the ability to take risk. If you don't want to stick your neck out, I think the free thinking will be a casualty. So you need, if you are thinking certain things and you want to push those ideas, you need to discover. You need to stick on it. That is something which you should follow. And if you believe in it, please do it, and you will get good results in your life. That's my perspective.
Free thinking is looking for new solutions, fresh ideas or innovation. Now, Jugaad innovation has become a buzzword around the world. So, do you think it is the result of free thinking in India? My question is to
Of course it is. And I would think it is frugal way of doing things. I mean, a solution which would be found with a lot of investment and a lot more resources, you can do with very little resources. So that is definitely an example of thinking, of doing things differently. And that comes only when you think out of the box, when you think freely. Absolutely, it is one of the factors.
Actually, when you're talking about free thinking or jugaad, the point is this, that it doesn't have to be something which is completely new. If it exists in some other market and it's been done well there, or if it's a new product which already has been created and run successfully somewhere else, if you bring that to the context of your own market or your customer, then that is, as far as the customer is concerned, that is innovation. And even that has got tremendous value. So whether you call it jugaad, which of course, like Mr. Bajaj pointed out, is a very good Indian example of innovation when you work under constraints, or whether you do radical research. The point is this, that free thinking actually has a spectrum which goes from radically new concepts all the way down to incremental changes in existing solutions. In fact, there's another piece of research that Boston Consulting Group did recently. They figured out that amongst the top US companies, fundamental research has dropped from 20% to 10%. This is an October 2013 report, which means that people are more comfortable doing incremental changes rather than doing radical, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I would like to say that necessity is the mother of invention, and jugaad, as we typically or traditionally understand in Indian context, I believe and I am convinced that Indian mind is very creative, and maybe whatever lack of other macro level support as it exists in Western countries may not be there historically, and therefore we have always tried to, Indian mind has always created a jugaad arrangement in finding out solutions. And many a times if you see, look at the rural life or semi-urban life, they come out with a lot of solutions through jugaad arrangement. And typical Indian managers also, we also come across that jugaad management, jugaad approach of incremental whatever creativity, and there is nothing wrong in that. And we get immense value, and sometimes, many a times it comes because of necessity.
Good afternoon, sir. My question to panel is, when an organization is at startup phase, it's very easy to implement 3 ideas, and there are lots of scope to implement 2 ideas. But as soon as the organization grows bigger and bolder, there are the risks associated with it, because there are the bigger clients and the business processes are not standardized. So my question is, what could be done to promote the free thinking culture still in the bigger organization?
I agree with you. The creative tapping of the creative ideas, or the making the entire culture creative enabled, is much easier in a smaller organization. And as you grow bigger and bigger, maybe across the country or outside the country, then it becomes there are challenges involved with this. But how do we really facilitate this process? I can always go back to some of my experiences and try to say that, first of all, the fundamental requirement is you need to have a good leadership who really understands the value of free thinking, how to unleash the creative potential of employees. That is number one. Second is, how do you create a culture across your organizations which really facilitate this? There are challenges. It is not that easy that really happens. You can come out with your innovation policy or suggestion scheme, or creative policy, reward and recognition schemes. But there are the experiences that I have seen in working in large organizations, it has not worked. Whatever we may say, we may have a very good reward recognition policy. Only few suggestions it generates, and once in a while a breakthrough kind of suggestions has come up, especially in engineering or maybe kind of organizations that I have worked. But I have not seen this policy really working. But in my current organizations, we always try to say that we have done a lot of innovation. Our company which has done a lot of breakthrough and we have achieved competitive edge because of innovations. But 90% or 95% of the approach is a consistent, standardized approach, which limits the creative and innovative approach of employees. Although there are enablers which we need to create, but while implementing, I do not see that consistency happening all across, and that kind of excellence really I have not seen in my professional
life. You see, when an organization is small, it's essentially entrepreneurial driven. And an entrepreneur, if nothing else, is a risk taker. So it's probably easier to do innovative things at that point in time. As it becomes bigger, you start bringing in people to start managing processes so that things are consistent and standardized. And that really is the challenge of any big organization. So there are organizations like Suzuki, which tries to ensure that you bring this entrepreneurial feel down to small groups. So you actually have situations where they use this Japanese thought called Kaizen, which is constant improvement. And they had a lot of innovative ideas which came up from the shop floor, where people who were just, maybe just graduates or even not even graduates, workers in the assembly line, they came up with ways in which they could probably be a cost reduction or they could be a quicker way of doing the same thing. So probably that is the kind of culture that can be fostered in a large organization. And remember, it's like Mr. Dasgupta says, there needs to be tolerance of failure. I think that is really the thing that is a value which a large organization deliberately throws out of the room. They just don't like taking risks.
Thank you. We have a couple of more hands there.
Good afternoon. My question is to the entire panel. I need to know how efficient is creativity in terms of applying it to a certain product and generating enough sales. Like, for example, a few years back, Pranab Mistry came up with this new concept of six cells technology, and we don't really see that. It's a completely new way of looking at technology and applying it. So we don't see that product in the market today. So what might be the reason for that?
See, new products have to reach the market in the right manner. They have to be marketed well. There are a number of examples where there could be good products, new products, different products, but they are not marketed, they are not distributed, they are not communicated. So unless it reaches the consumer in a manner where consumer thinks, yes, it is different and going to add value to what one is doing already, such things bomb, So it is not that only an idea, but that idea has to be carried to the consumer, to the market, in the right manner at the right time. So there are many such examples. Actually, especially in the case of small scale industry, it happens that they develop products, right products, but they do not have the distribution muscle, the wherewithal to reach the consumer and to communicate it to them. And such innovations then, fall flat. But that is part of the process, and one has to understand this. And sometimes you are able to do that, sometimes not. You are not able to do that. But it doesn't mean that one should not keep on innovating, keep on thinking, creating new products. But it has to happen. It is a part of life.
Okay, we have another question there.
My name is Sushi and my question is to the entire panel. On the one hand, we are talking about industry-driven innovation. The industry is recognizing and promoting innovation. on the other hand, we're talking about fundamental research. So what is the difference between innovation and invention? Is there a differentiation in the fine line between
which is changing the way you do a particular thing, or you satisfy a particular need of the consumer. Whereas innovation does not necessarily mean it is invention. Probably it is a different way of doing something which is being done already. So there is a basic difference between the two, and innovations are far more regular, but inventions actually they are far more laborious. It needs a lot more effort. It needs a lot more resources to do that, and which is where you see that many large corporations only invest money in basic research and inventions, and they can only do it compared to companies which are not as big or financially so strong.
Thank you.
My question is to the panel. What importance corporate gives to functioning of the brain when it comes to designing of activities that can lead to free thinking?
That's a rather difficult question to answer. I'll tell you how we look at things. It's fundamentally known that the brain has two parts. You've got the left side, which is logical, and the right side, which is creative. So when we essentially look at a new brand launch in terms of advertising, and we look at, so we believe that finding insights and the creative aspect that happens out of it are two sides of the same coin. And the way we go about doing things is that we first look at a process in which we try and understand category aspects, competition, the consumer, and then ultimately we try and find one compelling proposition, one single compelling proposition. And it's only from then that the creative work starts getting developed. And then we test what is a good creative idea, and then we take it forward into a 360 manner in which you can actually impact across touch points. So I don't know whether this answers your question, but this is a way of looking at the two sides of your brain, both of which are important where innovation is concerned.
Okay. Go ahead. The question is that I want to say that it's easy to get new ideas, but whether the idea is sustainable or not, how do as an executive you all judge whether the idea is sustainable or not? And can you give your example that when you judge the idea to be sustainable, but it came out to be failed, and what was the reason behind it?
Sorry, I'll again just, yeah.
Actually, I get this question that when we go for a new idea or something like that, it is incentivized very lightly. But for example, when I did my internship at Noida, there was a driver who just parked the car a different way, which reduced the loading time for a truck about 10 minutes. So it added another layer of 20% efficiency. But that kind of innovation is not incentivized by the company, which is important because a new product, a new idea is there. But the ideas or such things like Dart, for example, which changed the whole company by because in loading we increase the efficiency by 20%. It's very, very good for the company. So how do we recognize that? Get that ideas and incentivize that, because that's lacking in our industry, that we have good ideas, we work on ideas, there are different schemes also, but not for these kind of ideas to come at the workplace and what we normally do.
Okay. I'll request some other panelists to answer your question. I'll just go back to the first question. And how do we test ideas is what you really said. So I mentioned that we use thinking tools, and one thinking tool that we use is something that we have taken from Hollywood practice. So in Hollywood you have a lot of producers and you have many more script writers. Now, you can't expect a producer director to go through your entire script, doesn't have the time. So the practice there is to do what is called a log line, which means in 25 words you're supposed to explain your concept of the entire script and the story you've written. and that alone is read by the director. And on basis of that, he will reject or accept your script. So we use that again in advertising to understand whether a creative idea is actually good or not. Because in writing those 25 words, we try and ensure that the executional elements are removed. Okay? So, for example, we do this practice. For example, if you were to talk about James Bond movies and you were to write a log line for them, now you might be tempted to say James Bond has got a Walther PPK, he drives a BMW, he does this, he does that. But the fact is this, that most of these things are executional aspects. At the end of the day, he's a secret service who fights the evil forces with the aid of high technology and beautiful women in stunning locales, and that's it. So if you look at the 20 James Bond movies that are there, all of them are emanating out of this single log line. So one thing that you can do to understand whether the idea is good or not is to remove tactical and executional aspects and see the purity of the idea in its purest sense and see if it works.
I would just say that, while seeking ideas or creating solutions for the employees to the day-to-day operational processes or challenges or problems that we face on the shop floor are very much required. I would tend to say, let us see how does it come. If a person who is not very passionately involved in the work, or he does not own it, or to put it differently, the employees, the members of the corporate who have high level of ownership for the work, they are highly engaged and involved, they own it, and they do their work with high level of passion, they only bring out creative solutions because they observe it with a third eye. Because they own it, they take it as their own. It may be very small one, the solution, but it makes a lot of impact to the saving of time or process efficiency. And therefore, if we talk of incentivizing, probably there is, it is very difficult to institutionalize. But what is important is to recognize, encourage such kind of behaviors of the employees and appreciate and recognize them by the immediate supervisor or the manager or the shop floor leader, and also tolerate some of the failures. Then only you will be able to create a culture where people know, the employee who is working with high level of passion and ownership, he knows that if I am giving a solution to this problem differently, I am going to recognize. First of all, he will be loving that by giving that solution. And he may not be expecting a financial recognition, I am telling you. And therefore, creating that kind of culture takes a long time to do. It is very, very, what we call a passionate leadership role is required. Then only it can come. But at the same time, there are companies who also have different incentivization schemes. But I come from a school of thought where I would advocate that it is pride, passion, involvement, and appreciate and allowing them to do some mistakes probably are the greater value creators than incentivization.
Thank you for asking all those questions, and I want to thank my panelists, Professor Kaur, and then I want to thank you, Mr. Das, Mr. Bajaj, Mr. Kaur. Thank you. We appreciate it very much. Now,
gratitude, we would like to present our guest with a small token of appreciation. I would like to invite Professor V. Ranganathan on stage, please, to do the honors.
Next we have Mr. Debashis Bose. Next we have our moderator, Professor Srinarayan Sharma. Next we have Mr. Rajiv Bajaj. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Barttanu.